Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with Ronald Barrington Robinson and friends. Let's introduce our very talented co-host, Ms. Jackie Williams.
Hi.
Hi. And Mr. Henry Hatter.
Hi, Jackie. Mr. Host.
Welcome to the In My Opinion Show to our millions of viewers worldwide. Let's talk about the Voting Rights Act. Amendment that was discussed in 2014. The U.S. Supreme Court's ruling stripping Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act. Over 24 states have now enacted legislation to bar voting. The latest is Alabama closing 31 Secretary of State's offices, mostly in poor and minority counties. This is all done to disenfranchise the voting process. Hopefully, the federal government will step in, will stop this action. Members of the U.S. Senate, led by Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont, and the U.S. House Representatives, led by Congressman James Sensenbrenner, introduced bipartisan legislation, Senate Bill 1945 and H.R. Bill 3899, the Voting Rights Amendment Act of 2014. The purpose of these bills is to update and modernize the provisions of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which were struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court in Shelby County, Alabama versus Holder. Case decided in June 25th of 2013. Shelby challenged the constitutionality of the pre-clearance provision of the Voting Rights Act, under which certain jurisdictions which have an established history of state or jurisdictional administered disenfranchisement based on race need to obtain advance approval or pre-clearance from the U.S. Department of Justice or the U.S. District Court in D.C. before they can make any changes to voting practices and or procedures. Examples of these changes include redistricting or the redrawing of congressional district boundaries, which happens every 10 years as a result of the census, or a change in the date, time, place, or manner under which an election is held. Federal approval would be given as soon as the state or jurisdiction proved that the proposed change would not abridge the right to vote on account of race or color. The Shelby decision held that Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, which sets out the formula that is used to determine which state and local jurisdictions must comply with the pre-approved requirement, is unconstitutional and can no longer be used. Thus, although the concept of pre-clearance survived constitutional scrutiny, it will have no actual effect unless and until a new statute determines who should be covered by it. The legislation, which was just introduced, creates a new formula for determining which states must obtain pre-approval before making any changes to their election laws. And while the NAACP deeply appreciates all of the work that went into crafting this bipartisan legislation, we will now work to amend it through the legislative process so that more states or jurisdictions with a troubling history of administrating voter disenfranchisements practices must have proposed changes to election laws and practices pre-cleared before making changes. Sadly, we are all too aware that discrimination continues to plague our electoral process throughout the country, and that bar that is set by this legislation is too high, and too few jurisdictions will be covered if it is enacted in its current form. From the exceptions for voter ID laws, which are contained in the bill, to decrease pre-clearance coverage, to increase reliance on costly litigation, there are essential revisions and amendments to this bill that must take place to ensure all voters have equal access to the voting process. Just recently, and actually not recently, but since the Supreme Court judges declared Section 4 unlawful, almost 24 states have enacted conditions to prohibit people from voting. Recently, Alabama closed 31 Secretary of State's office in mostly black and poor counties. Now, this the people need to rise up and fight against this. Okay, it's unconstitutional, and we know what the reasons are. Okay, that the vote does count. It's that simple. Mr. Hatter, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Ron. I didn't think that you would ever ask me. Now, you spoke about gerrymandering, where the states redistrict every 4 years or every 6 years, whatever it is. Now, that has nothing to do with race. It has to do with jousting of two political parties against each other. They draw the line so that a plurality of the people in a given district will favor the majority party. And so it does happen that black people are concentrated in cities or in large metropolis in a single area because they're not spread all out. And here in Flint, that happened about 15, 20 years ago. They redistricted and they gave Flint a freebie, a black district. The district would have been better drawn if it had been 50% Republican and 50% Democrat. Because a Republican can never win in a black district with the overwhelming number of black constituents because they are Democrats. So you never get a balanced political approach to solving any problems. So I don't know whether that's favorable to the process. I think it disenfranchises blacks as well. But we can live with that. But everything that the government does is not necessarily anti-racial. I think that there are many Republicans who watch this process back and forth, and they argue the same things that blacks do. Well, why did you give us this bad area and with the least amount of Republicans? And as you can see around Genesee County, most districts are Democrats for the same reason. But nobody rises up and complains about that. And Republicans can't win in this. We can't carry a presidential vote for a presidential candidate because they can't muster the number of votes. And that's always going to be. That's the way it is. It's dominance of those who have the power and the numbers.
I don't think that's necessarily true in Grand Blanc because you guys always have a Republican.
That's where Republicans live. They live like blacks do in a cluster.
But I mean, I live in Grand Blanc and I'm not a Republican, so I mean,
I know you are. You gotta have some. You gotta have some Democrats.
You gotta have some sprinkles. As I would say. But
and you left the group, and the group is mad because you're gone. Okay.
Right. Well, we have to do what's best for us. But one of the things I want to point out back to some of the things that Ron was talking about, when you change the place where you vote, and what it is, a lot of people are conditioned.
Yes.
And this is what you have to consider when you say it's fair. You have to think about the people that are conditioned. If I have been voting, I listen to my mother, she's a person of habit, and when they get older, I don't care what election it is, she's used to voting where she votes. And if you're changing all of that, you cause for them to be uncomfortable. And when you make them uncomfortable, a lot of times they rebel by not going to the polls. And I think that's the purpose of that. Is because when you do that, because I mean, a lot of people, when you go vote, you see the same people all the time because it's like a group effort. And when you change that and you make them go to a place they're not familiar with, depending on their educational background and depending on their social status, they're not comfortable unless they are confident where they are. So it's a lot of, points in there that we're missing. So if I'm low income and I barely made it to the poll that you had for me, now I have to go vote in another county. How am I going to get there? And if you close the Secretary of State, how am I going to get proper ID to get to the voting poll?
That can all be overcome. Those are excuses.
No, they're not.
Those are excuses. No, hang on.
I don't believe that.
No, why do they close the Secretary of State's office? We've had the one in Mount Morris closed in, and one in Flint have closed.
But it's in Ohio.
Let's talk about Alabama. I mean, in the southern states.
But we got to talk about the system.
31 counties.
Okay.
All right, closed their Secretary of State's office, and like Jackie was saying, all right, people become comfortable, all right, in their local. Okay, but when they have to go, I mean, some of those have to go maybe several hundred miles to open Secretary of State's office. That in itself is to me is unconstitutional. That's taking away. That's taking away that. That's taking away that that ability to
It might do that, take away the ability, but it's not unconstitutional.
to cast your vote. And these southern states, predominantly in the South, are the main culprits. That's why they had to have pre-clearance, because at every turn, all right, they were denying minorities, black folks in particular, the right to vote.
And who makes up the majority population in those southern states?
Black people.
Okay, then who's at fault?
They disenfranchise these people.
Who has the power?
All right.
What's power? The power is the voting power.
How in the hell are you going to count all the bubbles in a bar of soap in order to vote?
Right.
Okay. Or how many kernels? How many kernels might be a weak argument? But these are facts.
You gotta have commitment.
How many kernels on an ear of corn? You know what I mean? That's a bunch of foolishness.
Right, but you gotta have commitment to practices and property and a philosophy that you believe in, and you pursue it and you support it, even if it means your death.
But you're saying
that is right, and a lot of people died for the right to vote.
No,
okay,
that was a long time ago. But
well, it still happens today.
If people don't get up and do what they need to do, how many people that you know that you're referring to go to the polls and vote? 30% of them?
Well, that's not the point.
Yeah, that is the point.
The point is having the opportunity to get to the voting place.
You do
to
have
cast
the opportunity
that
to
vote.
go 3 counties down and get in.
But this is where you're driving from. Let me let you drive in their car. You're driving from where you sit,
Mm-hmm.
and from where you sit, you have a transportation. You have a car that can get you there. You have money to pay for whatever transportation that you need to acquire, whatever. You have money to pay for whatever it costs for that identification. Well, these are people who are. This is poverty-struck areas. These are people that have zero income.
All people are not poverty-stricken.
No,
if you're black, you're not poverty-stricken. And we need to get away from that.
But
you can't get away to it until we have equality
This is statistics,
and equalness.
Henry.
You'll never get it as long as you're poverty-stricken and underfoot, underrepresented, under this, under that. It's not worth it.
But you can't talk about it if it's not a fact. This is a fact.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
But we've been talking about it for years.
Okay, but
and done nothing.
change the facts. Change the facts. Change the facts that they don't have the income to do these things, and you need to consider that.
There was a time that we did have the income, and we still did nothing. We didn't even go to the polls and vote, and we still
Black
don't.
folks
Even
have
the people
not
here,
had.
we got
have
an election
not
coming up
fairly-
for mayor, and they say, not interested.
Black folks traditionally have not had that right to vote as white folks have had. We are not asking for anything extra. We just want the same fairness and chance that everybody else has to vote, without putting all of this bullshit into the equation.
But Ron, if we occupy the largest number of people in these states, and this occurs, whose responsibility it is to guide the process? You got to have leaders, and you got to have people who follow and people who keep commitments to change the system. If the state says we are operating a deficit, and you go out and the governor comes out and says we're going to cut across the board, that means the Secretary of States will also have to cut. They will cut where the system is not working to some degree of efficiency.
Well, I can understand that.
Okay.
I can understand in terms
Thank
of.
you.
I'm not agreeing with you, but the point I'm trying to make: 31 counties. Come on, all of them are having the same problem.
Because they don't consider
That's a bunch of foolishness.
as worthwhile if you don't get up and vote. You don't have any potential to vote, and you.
No, they're afraid because, like you were saying earlier, all right, African Americans traditionally vote Democratic.
Yeah.
And you Republicans know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're effectively denying
Republican.
The constitutional right for black folks to vote.
Right.
Well, they got to be more than one thing. People want to see differences. They want to see
30,
growth. They wanna see
31 counties?
variations
Come on now.
And
But
how we
Henry,
look at things.
That's damn near all the counties in
You know,
Alabama.
the stats show that where the governor is Republican is where all of these crazy laws are popping up. Only the places where the governors are Republican. Now, tell me when I'm not telling the truth. All the states where the governors are Republicans is where all these laws are coming up, where they
Like
had
what
large
laws?
numbers.
Like what laws?
Like the identification law. They were saying that the reason why the identification law came up is because people were coming and falsely trying to vote. They
Well,
had no
I would
cases.
create a law
They
against
had
that
no
too.
cases.
I-
They had
I
no
had-
cases.
I had-
They
I
had
would-
no
I would oppose
cases
that.
to
I'm
even
sorry.
bring up that law.
We're not even.
That's the stereotype, the paranoia
Yeah.
that the Republicans are throwing out there.
It's not the
That
Republicans.
voter fraud.
There's
It's
some
voter
Democrats
fraud.
want things to be fair and equal. White people in general want things to be fair for black Americans. But you got to stand up for it, and you got
Well, what
to try to make it
Democrat?
work.
What state where the Democrat is a governor did we make some changes?
I don't know
to
about
make
the
it
governors,
difficult?
but white people all over this country, they want us to do better. They tell us every day. There are people in this country that don't want us to do it. But you got enough support on the other side to leverage across those who support you to get your goals accomplished.
So you think that it's an even field? No, it isn't. You think it's an even field? You think it's even on both sides?
It could be, I don't know, but we
Could.
know.
How big is could? How big a word is could?
We're
Right, so that's not true.
okay.
So it's not true. We're not.
How are you reasoning that? We're saying that, and it's been demonstrated, you can even read it in the paper, where white people come out and support with money and efforts and philosophy and everything else to improve the condition of the black American.
I agree with that to
Well,
a certain degree. I agree
And
with
they don't
that.
go in for this disenfranchising black people.
That's
And I don't
you
either.
can see it happen all the time.
But I work
okay?
against it. But I work methodically.
Well,
and
absolutely.
intelligently. And I work with other people. I won't take it necessarily to the choir, but I take it to the man.
But we have to
So
work
this is what we have to
methodically
change.
and everything.
Right,
All
right.
right.
Because everything that happened in our parties we're not happy with. But when it is something that we're
You got to remember, Democrats also want to see black people do well.
Absolutely.
Republicans want to see them do well. So if we could just kind of leverage across those
Then stop it.
opportunities,
Tell
we
your
could
friends
change
to stop
things.
it. Tell your friends to stop.
Well, we could change things if you leverage across the opportunities.
Well, that's what we would like.
And you can't tell-
opportunities to be the same.
Out here, if you got 1,000 people out there that are white, you can't tell which one's a Democrat or Republican. And besides, they
That's
don't
right.
care. But you can appeal to those people, and you get a feel from both sides.
If you can relate to them.
Oh, here.
How do we change the mindset of these folk in these state houses? All right, to be inclusive, okay, and make everything. I mean, in terms of, since we're talking about voting, make it fair for everybody. How do we change the mindset? Okay, because these people are the ones that change and make the laws.
But Ron,
Whether it be a county, whether it be a local, county, state, or federal.
Ron, I submit to you that I have seen evidence of individuals who bring people from the dead and write their names and on an absentee ballot and submit that to the voting system. And some of them you may even know. They may be even your friends. And if it's wrong for the other side, it's also wrong for us.
Of course.
You know what?
Now you're
hang on. Hey, let me just say this, Ron. Ron,
you're reaching for
It's
straws.
the Constitution
Okay.
that protects us, that keeps us, that saves us,
Right.
that allows us to stand up. And if you are promoting something that's contrary to the Constitution, then you're probably not supporting a good government. You gotta know that the Constitution is what protects the black man and the black woman. I'm sorry.
And if you know,
And they want it fair. People want to know when they go in and cast their vote, and
Did
so
you
do
just
I.
say you people?
yeah,
Yeah.
you did.
You said you people.
Did I say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Us people. Let me just say that when I go in to cast my vote, Ron, and I put it into the computer like that, I expect for my vote to count. I don't expect for it to be challenged by some cheaters.
Now, see, that's
And
another. That's another fallacy.
Hang on. Because I've seen evidence of that too. When people go in and submit 2 or 3 votes in different states or different precincts or different regions, that's cheating the system. And this, we got to look at removing fraud from the election system. We got to have confidence and trust in our system. After all, you will never find a system like the United States. Once you lose it, it ain't coming back.
That might be, that might be true. But you mentioned here earlier that people that I know that are fraudulently.
Yeah.
Well, name them. Okay, put them out there. If they're fraudulently,
They're already in jail.
No. Well, if they are, it's not for voter fraud. I guarantee you that. For some other foolishness.
But you know
what
what I'm saying.
No, I don't. Because you said I've heard this argument I don't know how many times about voter fraud. That's a bunch of foolishness. Out of millions of votes, this was a government notice. All right. What's that agency that conducts this stuff? Anyway, out of millions of votes cast, they found 3 fraudulent folk. All right, and this thing about that it's voter fraud is rampant. That is a lie. That is a lie, people. And those that perpetuate this lie, you ought to be
Why are we having this
shamed.
discussion then? If it's a lie, why are we having this discussion?
Because you brought it up yourself in a sense.
No, I didn't. You brought it up.
You said some of my friends, maybe that's them 3. I don't know that.
No, Ron. Folks, now look
voter
at this.
fraud.
Look at how. Now, you guys are making this thing Republican versus Democrat.
No.
Hang on.
Truth from fiction. That's how I'm making it.
No, hang on.
Truth from fiction.
We've gone through this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, white candidates are not going to come into black areas. For 5% of the vote, only 5% of the blacks vote Republican. They are not going to risk going into an area where they're not wanted.
Well, then you Republicans start giving minorities and women
of voter fraud when there's absolutely no contest. I'm sorry.
When you Republicans start giving Democrats and liberals, okay, the opportunities, maybe they'll allow you folks to come into their neighborhood.
I told you there are white people and black people, Democrats and Republicans,
you know what I mean?
rich and poor,
vice versa.
who want to see blacks do well. I submit that to you. You can go to the bank with that.
All I'm suggesting is that we seriously look at the disenfranchisements that's happening around the country. Okay, we've even had it right here in Genesee County, for that matter.
I called them on the carpet on that one when I was chairman of the Republican Party.
So it happens everywhere. Okay, but I don't follow the voter fraud stuff. Okay, I vote my conscience. All right, I don't vote because I know somebody or somebody's running for office or I like somebody or it's a relative. I vote for a person that has a lot of my interests at heart and what's good for the majority of the citizens. Jackie, with the minute we got left, what's your thoughts?
I just think that we just need to keep the field leveled, and we need to make sure when we're implementing these laws that they are actually needed, and it's not just something to disenfranchise some more groups of voters that could have their rights taken away because of the obstacles such as traveling and voter ID and money. You know,
I'm sensitive to what you're talking about with your parents being older and removing those precincts from within their region. That's a hardship. That's what we need to work on. But to say that the system is flawed because of that would be a flawed argument.
and I think if you see the numbers of how many people it affects, see, because that's not our backyard, so that doesn't affect you because you have your license and you can renew your license. But people who don't have incomes, those are obstacles.
Yeah.
Those are obstacles. And who's going to get an
I
ID?
I concede the
Who can
argument.
get an ID just for registration? You know, you have to decide between an ID and getting some food. What do you think you're going to choose?
Well, I concede. You could collectively go to Montgomery, Alabama. You can get people work together and do it. Show that you can work together the way people have always done things, the way your great-grandparents did in the age of post-construction. That's what they did. They worked together. Today, we don't work together. But we got to learn that again, how to work together to make realistic dreams come true.
In essence, that's what I'm advocating. Okay, fairness. You know, working together, compromising, and things of that nature. You know, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about when it gets right down to it. But the stereotyping and telling lies, and you know, from these politicians so that they can get a vote and so they can send hysteria and paranoia out and all that kind of foolishness. That's crazy. This has been a great conversation. I want to thank Mr. Henry Hatter and Mrs. Jackie Williams, and you, our viewers. This is Ronald Barry Robinson and friends. Until next time, stay focused.